Nigerians, it has become necessary for me to address you, having heard from many concerned Nigerians and having concluded a meeting with all the security chiefs. I must warn those who have hijacked and misdirected the initial, genuine and well-intended protest of some of our youth in parts of the country against the excesses of some members of the now disbanded Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS. On Monday, 12th October, I acknowledge the genuine concerns and agitations of members of the public regarding the excessive use of force by some members of SARS. The choice to demonstrate peacefully is a fundamental right of citizens as enshrined in Section 40 of our Constitution and other enactments. But this right to protest also imposes on the demonstrators the responsibility to respect the rights of other citizens and the necessity to operate within the law. As a democratic government, we listened to and carefully evaluated the 5-point demands of the protesters. And having accepted them, we immediately scrapped SARS and put measures in place to address the other demands of our youth. On approving the termination of SARS, I already made it clear that it was in line with our commitment to the implementation of extensive police reforms. Sadly, the promptness with which we have acted seems to have been misconstrued as a sign of weakness and twisted by some for their selfish, unpatriotic interests. The result of this is clear to all observers. Human lives have been lost, acts of sexual violence have been reported, 2 major correctional facilities were attacked and convicts freed, public and private properties completely destroyed or vandalized, the sanctity of the palace of a peacemaker, the Oba of Lagos, has been violated. So-called protesters have invaded an international airport and in the process disrupted the travel plans of fellow Nigerians and our visitors. All this executed in the name of the ENDSARS protests. I am indeed deeply pained that innocent lives have been lost. These tragedies are uncalled for and unnecessary. Certainly, there is no way whatsoever to connect these bad acts to legitimate expression of grievance of the youth of our country. The spreading of deliberate falsehood and misinformation through the social media in particular, that this government is oblivious to the pains and plight of the citizens is a ploy to mislead the unwary within and outside Nigeria into unfair judgment and behavior. On the contrary, both our deeds and words have shown how committed this administration has been to the well-being and welfare of citizens, even with the steadily dwindling revenues and the added responsibilities and restrictions due to the coronavirus pandemic. Government has put in place measures and initiatives principally targeted at youth, women, and the most vulnerable groups in our society. These included our broad plan to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. The creation of 75 billion Naira National Youth Investment Fund to provide opportunities for the youth and the micro, small, and medium enterprises survival fund, through which government is A, paying 3 months' salaries of the staff of the 100,000 micro, small, and medium enterprises. B, paying for the registration of 250,000 businesses at the Corporate Affairs Commission. C, giving a grant of 30,000 Naira to 100,000 artisans. And D, guaranteeing market for the products of traders. These are in addition to many other initiatives, such as A, farmer money, B, trader money, C, market money, D, N-Power, E, N-Tech, and F, N-Agro. No Nigerian government in the past has methodically and seriously approached poverty alleviation like we have done. With regards to the welfare of police personnel, the National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission has been directed to expedite action on the finalization of the new salary structure of the members of the police force. The emoluments of other paramilitary services are also being reviewed upwards. In order to underscore the importance of education in preparing youth for the future, this administration has come up with a new salary structure and other incentives for our teachers. Let me, at this point, reaffirm the federal government's commitment to preserving the unity of this country. We will continue to improve good governance and our democratic process, including through sustained engagement. We shall continue to ensure that liberty and freedom, as well as the fundamental rights of all citizens, are protected. But remember that government also has the obligation to protect lives and properties, as well as the right of citizens to go about their daily businesses freely and protected from acts of violence. To our neighbors in particular, and members of the international community, many of whom have expressed concern about the ongoing development in Nigeria, we thank you and urge you all to seek to know all the facts available before taking a position or rushing to judgment and making hasty pronouncements. In the circumstances, I would like to appeal to protesters to note and take advantage of the various well-thought-out initiatives of this administration designed to make their lives better and more meaningful, and resist the temptation of being used by some subversive elements to cause chaos with the aim of truncating our nascent democracy. For you to do otherwise will amount to undermining national security and the law and order situation. Under no circumstances will this be tolerated. I therefore call on our youth to discontinue the street protests and constructively engage government in finding solutions. Your voice has been heard loud and clear, and we are responding. And I call on all Nigerians to go about their normal businesses and to enjoin security agencies to protect lives, and properties of all law-abiding citizens without doing harm to those they are meant to protect. Let me pay tribute to officers of the Nigeria Police Force who have tragically lost their lives in the line of duty. I would like to thank those state governors, traditional and religious leaders who have appealed for calm and restraint. I also thank youth leaders who have restrained their followers from taking the law into their hands. This government respects and will continue to respect all the democratic rights and civil liberties of the people, but it will not allow anybody or groups to disrupt the peace of our nation. Thank you all. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
And that's a 10-minute address by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, President Muhammadu Buhari, talking about the ENDSARS protest, the 5 demands of the youth, the promptness which the government decided to take those 5 demands and work on them. Mr. President says that was misconstrued by some as a sign of weakness. Then he spoke about the violence and the vandalism and said he is deeply saddened by the loss of lives and that this violence has no connection with the genuine protests of youths in Lagos and elsewhere. And he also took time to list some of the palliatives that the government is currently doing to ameliorate the problem associated with COVID-19 and youth unemployment, and is now appealing to the youth to discontinue street protests, and he ended, "Your voice has been heard loud and clear." Let's hear loud and clear now from our Abuja studios, SUMNER SAMBO, our Rice political editor, to bring us political perspectives of what we have heard, Mr. President. SUMNER.
Yes, Mr. President has actually spoken to the nation, and at this point in time, he's calling for restraint, and he's asking that all young persons should understand that the government has heard their voices and it's committed to ensuring that the lives and property of Nigerians are well protected. And in all of this, we had anticipated a major decision as the National Security Advisor, retired Major General Babagana Munguno, had mentioned earlier on at the State House after the National Security Council meeting. But I can tell you both, most Nigerians will not be too happy about this because the president just went around, if I may use these words, actually romancing the issues as they are, because we do not have a very critical national policy that we can hold on to. So in all of this, he's just making appeals and appeals and appeals. And, well, we all hope that the nation will actually receive some of this. But we had thought that, just like the NSA had mentioned, would have a critical national security decision that would actually ensure that law and order is maintained.
Sumner, perhaps Mr. President had passed those very critical decisions you're talking about to the security chiefs in an earlier meeting he had with them. Perhaps that was what must have happened, and that wouldn't be announced on television, just in case not to empower those who are hoodlums and criminal elements.
Yeah, very well. Security issues are not usually announced on television and all of that. We see the strategies going out. Yes, we know that those ones will eventually be done. But the thing is that if you look at the analysis of the situations that we have had in the country, we expected, the strong message that will go out to especially the hoodlums and looters that are making life difficult for businessmen who have invested a lot of money. Don't forget that we're coming out of the COVID-19 lockdown and the economy was shut down for long. And then at this point in time when the government is actually trying to get a lot of investments into the country to see how more persons can get jobs and then more opportunities can be created for the youths, apart from the government initiatives, which Mr. President said have been put in place, we are seeing all sort of looting and all of that going on. So we had expected also that the president would talk about the compensation packages for businessmen who have put in their hard-earned monies and are now losing those monies as a result of the misplacement of priorities in one way or the other. And then we also had expected that Mr. President would talk about the issues of some security men standing aside while watching all of this, because it looks like there also seems to be a conspiracy of silence, as we have heard in some quarters, that the policemen have been given directives to actually ensure that they do not go close to where all of these looters and everyone are operating, so that the citizens will actually see what it means to be without policing. But the thing is that Nigeria's taxpayers are not only funding the police. We also have several layers of security agencies. The Civil Defense Corps, the Nigerian military is there, and then other paramilitary agencies and all of that. So if the police are being harangued by, by civilians and all of that, that's why we also have the mobile police force. So you come in place and then ensure that that unit is deployed while the regular policemen kind of like stay a little bit back, and then the businesses are protected. We need a lot of investment in Nigeria at this point in time.
Sumner, hold on a second. Let me introduce and bring into the conversation Paul ALAJE, who is a senior economist at SPM Professionals. Paul, thank you very much for joining us on the conversation this evening about the State of the Nation's address by Mr. President. Paul, hold on a second. I want you to take a little bit, listen more to what Sumner is analyzing, our political editor. Then I've got to ask you a few questions. You just spoke about businesses and investments. I have a few questions on that. Sumner, very quickly, how should the president's speech be acted upon by the peaceful protesters now that he has told them your voice has been heard loud and clear?
Well, they should accept it and put nationhood first. Like we all know, the nation supersedes any other person. We need to ensure that this nation continues to exist. We need to ensure that those who are conflict entrepreneurs do not profit from what was originally, a very good well thought out, protest, in the sense that although it happens sporadically, but nonetheless, the 5 points that have been put in place by these protesters are actually things that we need at this point in time. A lot of reforms here and there. So we should ensure that conflict entrepreneurs do not benefit from this, because you already see their acts everywhere, displacing businesses, displacing communities. Even the Oba of Lagos, as the president has already said, now, as President Muhammadu Buhari has said, the sanctity of the traditional institution is not one we play with, as our cultures actually teach us. And for this to have happened, then I can tell you it's something that's not good for the country.
Sumner, I listened to Mr. President's 10 minutes presentation, State of the Nation address, and he did not mention specifically those killings that happened on Tuesday night at about this time at the Lekki toll gate in Lagos.
Yes, the president just prevaricated on all those issues, and he talked about policemen who lost their lives and all of that. But I can tell you that I think the presidential handlers actually need to, at this point in time, start taking the lives of Nigerians seriously, because we know that there was shooting in that place, and the governor of Lagos has actually made it very clear that there were boots on the ground. Now, who ordered those boots on the ground or at the toll gate to disperse these protesters who were peaceful, and then we had instances of thugs coming in here and there? While nationhood is built on trust, we would like to engender the presidency to ensure that they do not toy with the issue of, national unity. Because the thing is that trying to just divert attention by not directly speaking to this matter actually doesn't put the government in the right position. The president should have said that an investigative panel will be set up, or he should have also said that the judicial panel of inquiry that has been set up will actually take note of this, and people should go and submit their memos, as has been said. But we didn't hear all of this, and there was no. We all saw people who were shot, and they are the hospitals. Even though the number of those who died is very controversial at this point in time. Nonetheless, Mr. President should have actually spoken to that effect. And then we should also know that National Security Advisor Babagana Monguno discussed about this issue earlier on, where he said he had told the service chiefs not to use non-kinetic security approaches. And what does that mean? It means that there were bullets fired and all of that, and these security agencies have been asked not to use live bullets and all of that. But non-kinetic approach in military terms actually means now engaging in psychological warfare, economic warfare, and all of that, rather than using live bullets and all of that on protesters. So it's an admittance, actually, that something was wrong, something was done wrong, but we're not seeing Mr. President actually holding anyone to account. And that's why I told you that, at this point in time, we need to have a situation where the nation receives good information that will actually assuage and calm down the tempers of this young population, because they are the bulk of the population, and if they misinterpret Mr. President's message, then it may be a problem.
SUMNER, Sambo, just hang in there with this conversation and discussion. Let's bring on Paul ALAJE, who is a senior economist at SPM Professionals. Paul, I'm sure you listened to Mr. President as well, and our political editor, SUMNER Sambo, spoke about what Mr. President talked about: destruction of property in Lagos, banks being looted, retail stores being looted, vandalized, banks and other property as well, including some government facilities as well. These are multi-million-dollar damages we're looking at down the line. But again, there was this talk about Mr. President did not speak to those lives that were lost at those sporadic shooting on Tuesday night. We want our production team to bring back that video just for a few seconds. This cacophony of deadly force being brought on the peaceful protesters around the Lekki toll gate on Tuesday evening. Take a listen, everyone. Okay, Paul, quickly, we'll just get to that very quickly, but give me your thoughts about the economic sound side of this entire conversation.
Well, there is no economics without security, just like security cannot be as such without economics. So to a large extent, I must say that I have listened carefully to Mr. President's speech. And for me, I have the good, the average, and the bad. What is good is that the president has seen that perhaps what happened has induced some economic negativity for the country, particularly southern Nigeria, and more importantly, the economic capital of the country, Lagos State. What we've seen is that Mr. President has recognized the neglect of young people. 135 million. That is the number National Bureau of Statistics called young people in Nigeria. And apart from that, recall that President Buhari a couple of weeks ago, as he marked 74 billion naira for this youth. When you divide that by the number, we are talking about less than 600 naira per youth. I must say that President also said a number of businesses to be registered for people, for businesses within Nigeria. Is going to register more businesses using Corporate Affairs Commission, and 30,000 naira will also be given to those who want to do business. So that's perhaps are the good things that government have seen. And going forward, I think the voice of young people have been heard. And I know no government again will take for granted the force of the young people. The average here is that a lot of things are not spoken about. Assets worth billions of naira has not been spoken about. Lives that you cannot quantify in monetary terms has been lost. Little or no mention of this has been said. Apart from mentioning that security agencies will be directed to protect life and property, a number of stuff that is expected by us has also not been mentioned. So I hope maybe Mr. President have not mentioned them for some security reasons. What are the bad? The bad here is that a lot of youth that we said we want to support are not just in Lagos. They are nationwide. We cannot say that registering, giving 30,000 naira to 100 people, it's not even up to a drop in the ocean. It is largely insufficient. Nigerian youth want beyond a monetary support, which is so very important, but moral support on part of government. I want to see a situation where businesses, particularly that is youth-driven, will be supported. There is supposed to be a particular fund that will be managed by private sector, which I expect Mr. President and his team to think about and they talk about, that will be managed by private sector, particularly those who are doing well within the private sector, not under Ministry of Youth and Sport, no, but that will be managed by private sector to be given to youth. Hundreds and thousands of youth have been left unmanaged, millions of them. We have seen the real protester. Now we are seeing the harm and the damage we have done to Nigerian youth. And that is what we see all over Lagos and most parts of Nigeria today. Those are not the protesters we have witnessed before. Those are youth that we have left without jobs. Those are youth that have been hungry. Those are youth that have been deprived. Those are youth that have been empowered for political reasons. They have come back to us. We need to do something very quickly so that we can still have a country.
Thank you, Paul ALAJE. Very quickly, let me ask SUMNER, SAMBO, our political editor here at Arise. Mr. President said that in his speech early, part of that, he says the promptness with which the government accepted the 5 demands of the peaceful protesters was misconstrued as a sign of weakness. Is this something speaking to what you call, is this what you call the trust deficit here?
Yes, like I've been saying in these past few weeks, there's a huge lot of trust deficit in the sense that in the past, we've had government making promises and they are unable to actually keep to those promises. And so when these demands were made, one of them is that the government should set up judicial panels of inquiry and all of that. Yes, they've been set up, and then we can see that the youths are also saying that the representation on such panels are, for the youth are not so much. So there's a lot of trust deficit because they are saying that if they are not fully represented, at the end of the day, the reports will come just like they've always come, and they may not properly be implemented. Now, compensation for those who have been injured during the ENDSARS protests is also one that they are looking for. And then the most important one, the prosecution of all the policemen who have been found to actually be the one promoting this police brutality and all of that. And a serving senator, who's also the minority leader of the Senate, Senator Inaya Baribi, had during the last plenary, actually on Tuesday, said that he alone has the names of 5 notorious SARS officers who are known for killing people like flies without looking back and all of that. So, you know, even parliamentarians are wondering why these names have not been published and then, you know, quick actions taken. And so that's why we are saying that the government needs to do much more. Now, there are also some good things that President Buhari said during his speech, one of which I really liked is for the fact that the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission is almost finalizing the you know, welfare of the police so that they will have increased salaries, and any moment from now, that will actually come to play. And then he also talked about the falsehood on the internet. Yes, Nigerians must understand at this point in time, that falsehood on the internet is actually putting our country in the very, very bad light. You've seen lots of the international community actually speaking to some of these things, including the International Criminal Court today, which says it is receiving some of this. But some of the things that we are seeing going out there are also falsehoods, some misrepresentation and all of that. So I think it's time, actually, that Nigerians actually pay their respect to the country by ensuring that they do not spread false information, false deaths and all of that on the internet. And then Mr. President also condoled with some of the policemen that lost their lives. Yes, these policemen are people like us. They also have families. They are grieving at this point in time. I think these are the good aspects of Mr. President's speech. But like I said, we need to have a lot more of trust building between the outgoing generation, the middle generation, and then the incoming generation, because the incoming generation are more than these 2 other generations combined. So if we continue to have that trust deficit, I can tell you both, saying it will be very difficult for us to continue. But if the government builds trust and we see the president coming to meet people and not reading prepared scripts and all of that, but empathizing What stops the president from going to Lagos to actually empathize with that community? Don't forget that even the media, we have become victims of the attacks. And these attacks happened, and we were caught unawares. What were the security agencies doing, especially those that are not policemen? So we need to see a lot of empathy from Mr. President so as to engender more trust between his generation and the younger generation.
Yes, SUMNER, this is going to be very difficult, and I'm trying to speak very slowly to get you to understand part of what Mr. President says and where we found ourselves between the good, the bad, and the ugly. The bad was that we had some SARS operatives with those very brutality, extrajudicial killings, and those things. Then you had the peaceful protesters, which I call the good. Then you have the bad. Then you have the ugly. Now the situation has gotten really ugly with what happened about this time on Tuesday, the 20th of October, just 2 days ago. So how do you think the security agencies will now be able to separate the good from the bad and the ugly?
Okay, Bosin, there are people who are specialists in conflict entrepreneurs who have been benefiting from the mismanagement of the Nigerian state over the years. And you can see their handworks everywhere. You can see them ensuring that, they break through the rank and file of peaceful protesters and all of that, and then infiltrating them, and then making sure that hoodlums and thugs and all of that destroy the economy, especially in the economic capital of the country. And the government at this point in time needs to ensure that the security forces that will be deployed to ensure that they maintain the law and order that Mr. President is talking about are sensitized to obey the human rights of citizens, create empathy. I mean, you could see that gentleman soldier officer who was talking with, citizen protesters in Osun State and all of that. That is how soldiering and policing should look like. When you see a lot of that approach, without the kinetic approach that they are used to, then you see a lot of empathy. And that's why you see the NSA is saying that they should adopt non-kinetic approach, and which would have to mean that, using psychological warfare to actually win back the trust of Nigerians. Now, we need to look at the government not as an enemy, but as a protector of the people through the security services. And if that is to happen, there needs to be a trust between the security services to see themselves as people who are guarding the state. And the state is different from the government. The government is just here in 4 years, 8 years, it's gone. But Nigeria will be here forever. And then their oath is to the country, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and not to a particular government or individual. And so once the troops or soldiers or policemen or whatever go to the streets and they actually show that their loyalty is to the Constitution and not to a government or the president or any other individual, you see a lot of, you see that the hearts and minds of Nigerians will continue to calm down, and then there will be a lot of, movement together, and then things will get back to normalcy. We must understand that we need to have a country at the end of the day, irrespective of the challenges, irrespective of the misinterpretation and all of that. And that's why when we're appealing also to the protesters last week that, yes, the government has also listened to your cry, just give the government some time to implement some of the 5 ideas or demands that you brought in. It was in the spirit of national unity, national security, and national cohesion, so that we don't get a lot of people losing their jobs like it's going to happen due to lots of businesses that have been burnt.
So thank you, SUMNER. Let me quickly throw this to Paul ALAJE. Thank you for staying with us on the show. So what do you think will be the key issues now on the mind of private investors and businesses as they are watching television at home, watching social media, seeing their businesses being destroyed, bank executives seeing bank branches being vandalized, some of them practically robbed, as it were, in a systematic and violent manner? And you see the retail stores also being destroyed. Of course, one of the messages that came from SPA Nigeria today was quite very interesting and appealing, that it takes a whole lot to rebuild a store, but takes a whole lot more to rebuild a country. And that was very interesting. We'll put that tweet out for our viewers to see in a few minutes. So, Paul, what do you think is going on? Thank you so much. much. That's the Spar Nigeria tweet. Our Lekki store has been vandalized and looted, but we acknowledged that this is only a setback compared to the larger issues we are all facing as a nation. And our thoughts and prayers remain with Nigerians everywhere and for a peaceful resolution to various issues at hand. End of quote. Paul.
Thing that comes to mind of average entrepreneurs whose goal is to make profit is perhaps inventory has been looted, and what they have in warehouses has also been damaged. We see what happens to a number of commercial banks in Nigeria, which of course will mean when curfew time are over, they might not be able to open those branches or those businesses back. Our insurance company, we need to sit tight now, particularly for those properties that have been insured. It's going to be a new day for them as claims upon claims will be rolling in for several insurance companies. And for those who perhaps have not insured their businesses, I'm afraid it will be a time for them to review completely, because it will be difficult to identify faces of those who have looted some of these properties. So for us, that's one thing that will dominate the mind of people. But, you know, another thing that could come in the minds of these businesses is we have done business in this environment. And this is the time for us to pay a painful quota to the system. It is very unfortunate, Mr. President, I've said it, and also lending my voice to say it is very unfortunate, but this is a phase. And I hope that with this statement Mr. President has made tonight, and the one that will come in the coming period as a matter of action to what President has promised, and a number of persons among the authority have also promised, we will see an end to the ongoing violence and also looting of stores and shops and banks and several businesses we have witnessed in Lagos and some other areas. And particularly, I need to mention this, which is public asset, burning down of courts and police stations. I hope that an end will come to this as a matter of immediate effect. You know why? This is because it is our taxes that government will collect again to build some of these public assets back. So whether we like it or not, when we think we are burning properties of government, you're actually burning part of your taxes that should have been used to provide buses, that should have been used to provide security, and so on and so forth. But why we need to stop this more importantly, it is not just because of party in power, it is not just because we are Nigerians, but because, as we speak, our foreign reserve has dwindled, and foreign investors with potential to come and invest in Nigeria through capital flow. COVID-19 already had its impact. According to National Bureau of Statistics, in Q2 report, it says, and I quote, about $6 billion that came to Nigeria 2019 reduced significantly to a bit above $1 billion in 2020. Now, when foreign investors see what is happening, knowing fully well that monetary policy has reduced rates from what we had from 13.5% to 12.5%, now to 11.5%, which of course became major disincentive for those who want to invest in Nigeria. With the ongoing looting and damage of public and private assets, I'm afraid it will become even more difficult for foreign investors to come into Nigeria. And if oil prices don't go to $70, $80 per barrel, Nigeria may not see an end to a recession that we have already entered into at the end of last quarter, third quarter. So for all well-meaning Nigerians, those that mean well for us as a country, it is time for us to come together as a nation, in the spirit of unity and peace, to see how we can rebuild Nigeria again so that we don't elongate this bitter history that we are writing on the sands of time.
Paul, our political editor, SUMNER spoke earlier about the compensation that Lagos State announced, a 200 million naira compensation victims fund. Now there has to be compensation as well for others. But look at this wanton destruction and looting and deliberate arson taking place in Lagos and a few places as well. Some of these stores are not as large as Spar or ShopRite or so. Some of them are retail individuals in down parts of Lagos. In many areas, these are folks who are living from hand to mouth, but who scampered home to safety on Tuesday evening because of the curfew. Now they'll be watching on television, seeing the little means of livelihood that they have been destroyed and looted, and watching it on social media. This will be very harrowing for them. So the banks will have to take some beating here. Now, do you think we'll have to think about compensation as well to these folks who have become what you call a cannon fodder, or those who are called, well, these folks who have gotten trampled in the midst of this entire mess that we found ourselves?
I think the Nigerian state needs to support them, and that will come by investigating, because when government says people should come and give record of what has happened to their goods, you will see millions and millions, and most of which will be true, some of which may not be true. But with investigation, I trust the competence of professionals in Lagos State. And I hope that those professionals will be deployed by His Excellency Mr. Governor of the state to see how they will investigate and seek support for these businesses. The reason is very simple. A National Bureau of Statistics said employment is 27.1% and underemployment is 28.6%. Lagos State alone, indeed, federal government of Nigeria and all the 36 states of the country, or in the country and FCT, can never employ enough people. It is private sector. And in private sector, it are small businesses that are the lifeline of the country. So these small businesses particularly must be supported. And I am putting this forward as a suggestion to Lagos State government and indeed other state government that have been affected to put up a special fund, which could be, if you like, ENDSARS support fund or whatever name government may want to target, so that they can support these businesses, maybe not up 100% of their losses. 20% is a lot, 20, 40, 50, as the case may be, based on the capacity of government. I'm not unaware of the losses directly to the states, which includes buses for BRT, among other aspects of government that unfortunately have been lost to this violence. But in the coming period, I would strongly recommend that government will not just fix public assets, but also support private sector and go back and have mass reorientation of young people, those who are between age 18 to age 35, if you like, and in the case of Nigeria, maybe to age 45, of why people must change their orientation and create more opportunities for businesses to thrive, for small people, for small businesses to thrive, and for young people, 65% of our population, to get jobs in their hands, so that we can stop the violence in the coming period.
Thank you very much. Let me allow SUMNER SAMBO, our political editor, to give us about a minute very quickly. You're a political editor, and of course, what does this really mean for Nigeria's political equation, democratic dispensation, just 60 years after independence?
Well, what this means is that the young people of Nigeria have rediscovered their power, but this power should be channeled through the votes. Ensure you get your PVC card and all of that, and not engage in this wanton destruction of property. Yes, they rediscovered their power, and then they actually successfully executed this protest from the first week down to the second week. But the major problem that they had was they did not know when to stop. And, just like a popular, tire brand actually says that power is nothing without control. If you do not know how to control the power that you have, it will consume you. And that's what we are seeing right now, that the young people misdirected their power, and as a result of that, it's been infiltrated. You have thugs, hooligans, and all of that coming in. And so, as we move forward, we should ensure that when we have youth power, there is that youth power for popular participation and for nation building, not for national destruction. Because as of last week, when they were being begged upon to halt their strike that
SUMNER SAMBO, ALAJE, let's take a break, everyone. Stand by, everyone. You're watching Arise Exchange here on Arise News Channel. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Arise Exchange. I am Bosin Amafaye. President Buhari spoke about a couple at the top of the hour. He spoke for just about 10 to 11 minutes, and he spoke to the right to protest and the receipt of the 5 demands by the peaceful protesters: end SARS, end police brutality, reform police hashtags. He says it was deeply sad that lives were lost. He says there was no connection with the peaceful protests to the violence that we're seeing right now. He says those protests were genuine at the beginning by youths of Nigerians, and he listed some of the social interventions that the government has done so far and then continuing. So he's asking and appealing to the youths to please discontinue the street protests, and says your voice is heard loud and clear. Mr. President had just spoken, so we're trying to make some sense and get a bit of analysis and insight into his speech and what the wider ramifications will be. SUMNER SAMBO, our Rice political editor, is standing by on the show with me throughout the hour. Thank you so much, SUMNER. So, how hard do you think things will be moving forward? We're in the fourth quarter of the year, and this is when you have those who are looking forward to it being a very tough year so far in terms of COVID-19, in terms of lockdown. Folks hardly had to get by during those days of lockdown. Then you had the lockdown easing. Folks were trying to renegotiate their loans with the banks as directed by the central bank. Now they haven't gotten through that. We have this on our hands in a very area that is very heavy for commercial, merchandising, investment, and all of that in Nigeria, which is Lagos Southwest.
All right, thanks, Bosen. At this point in time, the young people of Nigeria should understand that with what has happened in the past week, we are going to have an increase in the unemployment rate when the NBS eventually releases, the statistics of this quarter that we're in. A lot of people will be jobless because of the, the looting, the arson, and all of that has happened. And like you mentioned quite all right earlier on, investors will be afraid of investing right now. So assuming I was preparing to invest in the first quarter of 2021, with what has happened right now, I may just decide not to invest or just stay back and watch what will happen till maybe Q2 or Q3 of 2021 before I can decide to invest my money. Because what has happened to us is that the generation that are most affected by unemployment are the ones that have mismanaged this protest by ensuring that they did not know when to actually halt back that protest and leave the burden on the government to actually ensure that these 5 demands are attended to. Because after all these protests right now, yes, we all know that we shouldn't only be thinking of our jobs and all of that, like some of them have been saying on social media. But the thing is that after the protests, after agitations, you will need to go back to your job. And if you need to go back to your job, what will now happen when you've allowed it to be hijacked, or some younger persons have also gone ahead to burn down companies and all of that, and they are even still penciling down some companies to be burnt and all of that? I mean, it's a challenge. Look at, for example, those who are in the media who are going to lose their jobs. Now, their dependents who were always looking up to them will have no choice than to stay back, because you cannot look up to someone who is already unemployed. And so my appeal to the younger people is that in as much as they've rediscovered their power, they should channel it into, seeing how they could create political change through the right path, just like Mr. President Buhari just mentioned. The country should be in existence then before you pursue whatever you want to pursue. In doing that, you would ensure that your power is channeled into popular political participation to ensure that you choose the right leaders. And I am thinking, Bosen, that it's time for Nigerian youths, if they think that they have this huge power, to channel it into voting a person or a president who will be under 50 in the forthcoming elections. Do they have the power to do that? Yes. Will they be able to do that? Well, we all look up to them.
SUMNER, when we talk about this political change and socio-economic change that the country sorely needs, it's not just about the federal. What about the federating states, the subnationals? Paul ALAJE, when you talk about, and you said these youths are not just in Lagos, for example, those who are peaceful protesters in Lagos represent the entire spectrum of 200 million Nigerians, 36 states and the FCT. So this is as important as a national issue, not just that of Lagos State. Paul, are you there? Let me take SUMNER, would you please react to that very quickly?
Yes, my reaction to this is that we should understand very well, especially the young persons, that whatever we are destroying at this point in time is a national heritage. Like we had in Asaba today, we had a courthouse burnt and then two staff of the court being burned down. These are courts that are meant to prepare justice. And then the thing is that we have in other states, including in Abuja here, Popular Market, Gudu Market is actually closed right now because there was the killing of one person. And then in other states, Jos and all of that, all over the country, this is not the best. This country is a heritage. These institutions that are being destroyed are a heritage, including the police. The police is a heritage and it's over 100 years. Now, if we need to, bring all this together, the grievances together, we have to ensure that they are channeled in such a way that the government will have no choice than to listen to it. Now, in all of this that we've seen, especially in the economic capital of Lagos, lots of things happening. We have seen that these young people are actually educated. They know what is right. But the thing is that the failure to actually articulate leadership actually affected them. Because if they had leaders, they would have been able to negotiate more, irrespective of the fact that there are fears that the leaders would have been compromised in one way or the other. But despite that fear, I think that if they wanted to achieve more, it would have been better at the nick of time, especially towards the end of last week, for them to have nominated people that they trust. If they don't trust their generation, at least they are those of the older generation that they trust. And as a result of that, the economic capital of Nigeria wouldn't have been granted.
SUMNER,
because,
a quick one.
Irrespective of what we say, we need to have a country and all of that.
SUMNER, just a quick one. I was asking about the state levels. What do you think other state governors should be doing right now? See what is happening in Lagos and a few other states. How quickly should they hit the ground running, taking care of the youths in their domain?
Okay, that's a very good question, Bosen. This has shown that a lot of persons are unemployed and then a lot of persons are underemployed, so that when there are crises, they can easily, leave the petty jobs that they do and then just get into movements or misdemeanors in one way or the other. So what the governors should be doing right now is that they should consider partnering with the private sector to ensure that there's, first of all, security of life and property, and then a conducive environment for investment, and then thirdly, see how they can get leaner government. The problem is that whenever we say that government should empower people and all of that, they think of employing more people into government, and there's a big challenge with that. At this point in time, we should be thinking of leaner governments. So if the governors can work towards leaner government and then creating opportunities for the private sector and ensuring that there is security for private investment, they will create more jobs, and then it wouldn't lead to lots of agitations. So imagine we had lots of plantations, we had lots of big manufacturing houses and all of that, we wouldn't have this kind of challenges. So the governors should learn from Lagos. The governor of Lagos has actually shown leadership with the way he has partnered with the private sector. Like we heard him earlier on the Arise show this morning, he said that he has been speaking with the organized private sector to also hear their views, to ensure that they do not sack people at the end of all of this. And so with those kind of partnership, I believe that the subnationals will be able to help the federal government to create more employment and then reduce youth agitation across the country.
Thank you so much, SUMNER SAMBO, Arise political editor, for being with me on the show for the hour. Thank you so much. And of course, Paul ALAJE, senior economist at SPM Professionals, thank you also for getting in on the show today. And that's your Arise Exchange for tonight. I am Boston Amofaye. You're watching Arise News Channel on television, on Facebook, and on our Twitter handle here and around the world. See you next time. Stay with Arise News Channel. Bye for now.